On today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we'll be bringing in Nick Fairbanks for an edition of Fairbanks Friday, discussing the 3-2 victory for the Florida Panthers over the Detroit Red Wings. The Florida Panthers were up as much as 3-1 on Friday night, but didn't make it easy at the end. But the Florida Panthers did go perfect on the PK and on the power play, and Sergei Bobrovsky was outstanding for the Panthers. We're going to discuss that more on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Saturday, January 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steve Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects with Heidi Kalakash. And don't forget to also send in your screenshot of your subscription to the Locked On Florida Panthers YouTube page and your 5-star rating to the Locked On Florida Panthers Twitter page at LO_FLA Panthers. Or email it to lockedonflapanthers@gmail.com for your chance to win 2 free tickets to the Florida Panthers versus Vancouver Canucks game on January 14th. So, Cats fans, it's a special Saturday edition of the show. As promised, we were going to do an episode on Friday night, and the Florida Panthers came out with a dub, really after allowing the Detroit Red Wings to score 64 seconds into the game off a deflection right in front of the net. Sergei Bobrovsky was just incredible the rest of the way. The Panthers scored 3 unanswered goals, a really tough road game for them. And special teams was the story of this game, going perfect on the PK and going perfect on the power play, going 2 for 2 as well. And then Sergei Bobrovsky just incredible, facing 31 shots, saving 29 of them. And it's a special Friday night edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where it's, by a technicality, it is still technically a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So I'm very thankful to be welcoming in Nick Fairbanks in his usual Friday slot, even though this is going to be released on a Saturday. So, Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back, and we should call this episode the retro episode, just because this was completely unplanned as far as the jerseys that we're currently wearing. But I appreciate you, having me on for this post-game show.
Yeah, and like Nick said, this was totally unplanned. Just while I was down in South Florida, I had an opportunity to purchase a reverse retro jersey, and even. It's even better in person, and just had to get one. And of course, I saw you wear the old reverse retro from 2 years ago, and had an opportunity to when we went to the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins on opening night two seasons ago. When you wear it, you can't really, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can't really see it on the camera, but it he does have it customized with Fairbanks and number 96 representing the 96 season for the Panthers. But let's just get right into this game, Nick. And really, for the first 15 minutes of this game, really the Detroit Red Wings were really taking away all the shooting lanes, and the neutral zone for the Panthers, even though the Panthers were able to get a goal like just a few minutes after the Detroit Red Wings got on the board 64 seconds in. And man, 2 games in a row that we're talking about that fourth line for the Panthers, an incredible forechecking line. Eric Stahl, 13 points in the last 17 games. And listen, I don't mind beating the dead horse on that fourth line and how much they've been grinding, and Eric Stahl getting off to, of course, a poor start, but it's understandable with him not playing a full season. But now he's getting his groove in and having 2 explosive speedsters on his line as well. It's really encouraging to see.
It definitely is, and you can definitely tell that this fourth line is re-energized. I mean, the addition of Giovanni Smith, a hardworking physical player that, he had a homecoming, here in Detroit. So it was actually good to see him get on the score sheet. Now, he was the main reason why the goal was scored, outside of the awesome shot by Bobby Orsling, that we like to call him, Gustav Forsling. But he's the one that I was actually able to take the puck away against Sundqvist in the neutral zone, having a physical play, taking it away and dumping it down, allowing Stahl to actually retrieve it behind the net, and then feeding Orsling at the top for a goal. So fourth line really came to play, set the tone, got the team going. And then after that, it was really a 5-on-5 battle, and then special teams took over. So very happy to see that Florida came out on top with this one. You can't usually say that, as far as the special teams go this season, that they win it, but they win it in a big game, a 4-point swing.
Yeah, and puck management was a little bit of an issue for the Panthers as well. And it's crazy to think that after that first period was a clean period when it came to penalties by both teams. They were letting them play. Lundell got hit twice in the same shift. Once by Fabry in the neutral zone, that went a little up high. That I wasn't very pleased about. That one not being called right in the middle of the ice for really everyone to see. But really, just really from the last 5 minutes of the first period to the midway point of the second period, the Panthers really started to tilt the ice. They were getting in the shooting lanes of the Detroit Red Wings, even though they did go to the box a few times. Mark Stahl a little bit ambitious with his stick there, but an unsung hero in this game, is Eetu Luostarinen in this one. It is when Radko Gudas finished his check, Eetu Luostarinen went on the rush and got an opportunity right before they eventually did blow the whistle dead for that penalty. And Eetu Luostarinen also got a rebound opportunity off a Sam Bennett backhand shot on Ville Husso. Big juicy rebound, and Eetu Luostarinen was right there for a second chance opportunity. And then that big block at the end on the 6-on-4 as well. So Eetu Luostarinen, even though he wasn't a star of the game, didn't get I don't believe he got a point in this one neither. Gonna double check that right now. No points for Eetu Luostarinen. Unsung hero for the Panthers in this one.
So what can you say about E2D2 this season that he's done wrong? I believe that he's come into the season done everything just about right. He's been on the second line. He's moved on to the third line. Like, he's played in every possible situation this year and has proven to be a stable forward in the top 9 for the Florida Panthers this season. So I think you put it nicely today in the chat that, thank you, Dale Talon, for Eetu Luostarinen, because he was definitely probably the best pickup, or at least the best player acquired in the Vincent Trocheck trade to the Carolina Hurricanes. But getting back to the game saving, or I shouldn't say game saving, but it's just he blocked the last shot of the game that really put the game on ice. And we don't really see that a lot from this Panthers team. They just like to get inside of lanes, and hopefully Bob can see it. And I'm going to go into a little bit about that later, but just laying out the body and really putting himself in a position to actually, sacrifice himself for the team and for the win.
And right before recording, I decided to press pause on that last the Luostarinen block. And if if Luostarinen did not block that shot, there was going to be someone right on the blue paint ready to tip that puck in and create some traffic. And there was no other Florida Panthers player that was there to block that shot other than Itu. And he lost his stick. The Florida Panthers were also lost the faceoff battle pretty badly in this one.
Man,
So
yeah.
when the Panthers were pinned in their own zone on the 6-on-4, needed a face-off to clear the zone, Barkov had an opportunity to clear the zone, but Hronek was like right there to just keep it in. And man, Etu finishing that off just to seal this game. But the real story of this game is special teams and goaltending, and that's something that we are going to discuss in the second segment here on this special Saturday / Friday night edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are going to discuss that next with myself and Nick Fairbanks. But first, we're going to tell you all about Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want to all the fat and calories, then you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then man, I got just the thing for you. You've got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're delicious, so you won't think they're bad for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? For starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come unbelievably flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk into the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. Back on this second segment here on this special Friday night / Saturday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Still technically a Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And Nick, the story of this game, tied 1-1. And listen, and we had a little bit of a gap between when the final buzzer went off and us recording, and I decided to count the last 10 games prior to Friday's game of the Panthers going perfect on the power play and the amount of times they've given up at least one power play goal in the last 10 games. 6 out of the last 10 games, the Florida Panthers have at least allowed one power play goal. And it felt that I just wanted to look that up real quick, because it just felt like every single game the Florida Panthers were at least giving up one on the power play. And it's been frustrating as of late. And Paul Maurice even spoke about how the PK was one thing that he was concerned about, not the power play. And he's proven to be right. 2 for 2 on the power play. And 5 for 5 on the PK. And at times as well, they also had an opportunity where they killed a power play via a Detroit committing their own penalty on the interference on Sam Bennett right in the middle of the neutral zone as well. So they killed their own momentum as well. And Aaron Ekblad is multi goal game, multi power play goal game as well for the first time in like over a year. I believe it's been since 2021. So we're in 2023 now. So it just goes to show how big of a gap it's been for Aaron Ekblad. And, I know power play goals aren't the end all be all for defensemen, but just a very encouraging game by Aaron Ekblad via offensively, despite getting in a little bit of penalty trouble in the third period.
Definitely, and I think that's the biggest thing is that lately the Panthers have been shooting themselves in the foot, killing their own momentum, or at least putting a lot of stress on the roster by taking penalties, taking undisciplined penalties. Ekblad took two this game that were kind of infuriating to to say the least. I mean, especially that last one that he took where he cross-checked Larkin in the back. There was no need for that. I understand wanting to play physical and let your presence be felt, but there's no need to put your team in a position like that. Some will say Larkin possibly flopped on that, maybe.
I don't think so.
No, have you ever been hit with a stick across your your shoulder blades? Yeah, it hurts. So it's just there's no reason for him to do that. But at the same time, maybe he's starting to round out a little bit. He did score the two power play goals. He's looked better the last couple games. I know that I had basically written him off this season because of either his injuries or he just didn't look the same. So hopefully he's turning a corner, and that means that this Florida Panthers team can turn the corner with him as well. But as far as that first power play goal, all Alexander Barkov. He was able to retrieve the puck, take it across the blue line, and then he shovels it over to Chuck, who knocks it out of midair down the boards, which is an amazing play in itself. And that caused the Red Wings to collapse on Barkov, and I think it was Reinhart right in front to let Ekblad walk in for an easy goal. So hats off to the captain for really pulling that together. And that's what the Panthers need. They need their best players to be the best and also draw that attention so that it allows other players to actually step up and, put the puck in the back of the net.
And you said it best. All eyes were on Barkov, puck watching, and then credit to Aaron Ekblad as well, trailing on the play and able to just creep up while all eyes were just on Alexander Barkov. Barkov, 39 points in 36 games coming into Friday night's game against the Detroit Red Wings. Like the stats of Florida Panthers players against the Detroit Red Wings is some of them are outstanding. With like I mentioned, 39 points in 36 games, just add two more for Alexander Barkov, both primary assists too. And then the second one with Ekblad on the rebound. Dylan Larkin was caught napping just a little bit.
Yes, he
on
was.
that one where Ekblad got the rebound on that one. And speaking of performances against the Detroit Red Wings, coming into tonight, combined with his time as a Florida Panther and his time as a Columbus Blue Jacket, Sergei Bobrovsky, 22 wins against now 23 against the Detroit Red Wings, and two of the biggest saves that he had where the defense was creeping up a little bit off the blue line, and it caused Adam Ernie to go on a 1-on-0 all by himself.
That one play, I don't know what happened there. I mean, like I made the point that we don't have Pavel Bure on the ice anymore because that's the only guy that can probably do that. But I don't know how Ernie got that open during that play. But sorry, I cut you off there.
Oh, no worries. But one of the biggest saves that Sergei Bobrovsky had on the night, and then the other one was Dylan Larkin, who was right on the doorstep. I believe it was a rebound opportunity, and then you see Bob with the glove, and then as Randy Moeller put it best on the broadcast, just a little mustard on it. And David Dork of Local 10 tweeted how Bob's performed in his last 10 starts. I mean, the record, which again, goalie wins are not necessarily stats, 4-6-0 for Sergei Bobrovsky, but his save percentage 9-10 in that stretch, 29 saves out of 31. Not going to do math in my head, but that's over 9-10 for the night. Trust me when I tell you that save percentage is over that. So just continuing and listen, we haven't really said this much this season, but he earned his $10 million tonight.
And $12 million in salary this year.
Yes.
So that man is making some serious money. The Detroit broadcast is the one that I watched this evening, and they were fawning over Barkov tonight, saying that is a major player, they said top 3 in the league. And, when they scored the power play goal where all the eyes were on him, Mickey Redmond, who's actually become one of my favorite commentators, or at least analysts, it was just fawning over him on that play. But then you have Bob, stopping Ernie on that ridiculous breakaway. I mean, that's a peewee breakaway, in my opinion, or beer league breakaway. And then you have the Statue of Liberty save on Dylan Larkin. that Red Wings fans should know about, because Patrick Waugh tried that one time. It didn't work out very well for him. The puck ended up in the back of the net. But Bob, in his career, as you were saying, got his 23rd win. He has a win streak of, let me see here.
I think the Panthers in general as a team, they have
He's
8 in a
12
row
yeah, he's 12
against.
and 1 in his last 13. And he had a 935 save percentage tonight. So he really kept the team in it tonight. And the major reason being is that the Panthers were outshot. They were outchanced. I won't say they were out physical, because it was a nice grind game. Both teams were
Yes.
going back at it. It's just that Detroit ended up getting the better of the chances. But Bob saved the ones that he needed to tonight, which allowed Florida to actually take advantage on the power play and take the W in this one.
Yeah, and also credit to the we spoke about the Panthers blue liners on the offensive end. We also got to give them credit on the defensive end as well, because as far as shot attempts, I have it right here, 47-32 at 5-on-5 shot attempts, but the Panthers 16 blocks to Detroit's 7. And even in the third period, the ice was tilted to Detroit, especially in the last 3 minutes, where they really got that goal on the 6-on-5, with about 3 minutes left. And man, we spoke about earlier in segment number 1 about Little Cesars Arena, and that was on the 6-on-4 with Aaron Ekblad going to the box. So it definitely was not it definitely wasn't easy. It definitely what looked at 3-1 at the time is like, okay, Panthers are going to have this 4-point swing, especially with Detroit having 3 games in hand on the Panthers. Also, Buffalo has games in hand with the Panthers and the Sabres being tied in points as well. So didn't make it easy. It was once that final buzzer went off. Did you see Sergei Bobrovsky? Like, he had like the Linus Ullmark, Jeremy Swayman kind of like hand raise for after that win. You never see that out of Bob.
No, he's very. I don't want to say he's like Spencer Knight, like where his emotions are very, inside, or he doesn't show it a lot. But he deserved it this game. I think he was very proud of not only his performance, but what the team was able to do in front of him to secure the win. Because how many times have we seen this, not with just this Panthers team this season, but in previous seasons, where they would have a lead, 3 minutes to go, and they would lose it. And then they would eventually lose an overtime or a shootout. So it's good that they were able to, buckle down and actually get this win. But that Bob was such a huge part of it. And, he was basically their best penalty killer, if you want to call it, or he was their best player in the last, 15 minutes of the third period. So, not often that you see that the Panthers are outchanced 5-on-5, but, sometimes, you have things that do opposite. So 5-on-5 wasn't there. Okay, we'll just flip it on you and the power play is going to click.
Hey, hockey is strange like that at times, where
Oh yeah,
you know that your 5-on-5 numbers for at least the majority of the season have been there, and special teams have been up and down, and then a game like this, that's where it's completely flipped on its head. And it's a great win for the Panthers. Like we talked about 4-point swing, and they win the season series against the Detroit Red Wings with 1 matchup to go. And
correct.
I hope the Fairbanks household for you personally is I hope you're able to sleep well, and that there's no stress for the Red Wings fan that you have in your life.
She's doing just fine. She's a little under the weather right now, but she's okay. I think after we scored the third goal, she kind of knew, her fate. But then Fabry scored, and I'm like, I know my team too, and this is not looking too good. So there's a little bit of, I was maybe sitting on one butt cheek until the end of this game. But, I'm just glad Florida was able to pull it out. It was a much more entertaining, or much closer match game than the first game in Sunrise, maybe a month ago.
Yep. And and this will be a good time to transition to segment number 3, where we're going to kind of look ahead and kind of update on some of the scores around the National Hockey League on this Friday night. And we're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football, college bowl season, to basketball and hockey. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We've got the latest and fastest and easiest way to get all your betting info. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. Third and final segment on this Saturday, January 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It is a technically a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show, as we are recording on a Friday night after the Florida Panthers defeat the Detroit Red Wings by a final score of 3-2 at Little Cesars Arena. A grinded out type of win for the Panthers as Detroit cut it close. And Nick, I'm checking scores right now, and one of the teams that are ahead of the Panthers, the New York Islanders, are on a West Coast trip right now, and they're currently losing 3-1 against the Calgary Flames at the Saddle Dome. And that it just goes to show how big this win is for the Panthers. By the end of tonight, we could see still six points out of the last wild card spot. I spoke about on yesterday's show about the lottery odds as well for the Panthers pick to Montreal, starting on Friday morning at 5%, and that between the four teams separating that the chances going from 5% to 2.5%. So not only is there an incentive to win to try to get to the playoffs, but an incentive to win to lower those lottery odds for Montreal to not get up there in the lottery. But man, with getting some help, and hey, 6 out of 8 points is needed for this to be a successful road trip. They got 2 tonight, my friend.
They did, and they still have the Vegas Golden Knights. They have the Colorado Avalanche, and who's the other team they still have?
Dallas on Sunday, 3:30.
Oh, yeah. So it tells me that this game in Detroit is something that they really needed, not only for the standings, but maybe for the morale. That's saying that, hey, they can close the door and they can shut down and win a game. Now they have to go into Dallas and do the same thing. Hopefully, Jason Robertson is not as hot, or Joel Pavelski, who just is fresh off of signing a year contract extension. And then their goaltender, I keep forgetting his name.
Jake Ottinger.
Jake Ottinger, sorry. His contract status and Spencer Knight messed me up early in the off season. Hopefully they're a little bit off their game, and Florida can play their grind game and wear them down and win a close game again. So as I stated earlier, I was watching the Detroit feed, and they were talking about Florida's chances to win the playoffs. And as I mentioned, Mickey Redmond had mentioned that he thinks Florida's going to be the team to look after in the second half, because he says that they've played as well as they could, with their record outstanding, that their record doesn't, really reflect how they played, and that their luck is going to change in the second half, and that Detroit has a lot to learn and also to try and catch up to them. But now that they've got this win in their pocket, they have 3 teams to get over to get into a playoff spot. So you have Buffalo, as you were saying, is tied with them in points, but has 4 games in hand. Then you have Pittsburgh, who's 4 points ahead and 2 games in hand. Then you have the New York Islanders that have 46 points, who are currently losing right now, that are going to be having a game. Actually, Florida's going to have a game in hand on them once that game goes final. So maybe it might be easier to catch the Islanders, but at the same time, you just got to win games. You got to stop letting games get out of hand. And, we talked about this on other episodes, like the Oilers game that they let go, and a few others that they kind of, St. Louis, those games that they should have had that, they might be in a playoff spot now if they, would have put those games away.
Yeah. And this game of the road trip this first game of the road trip was really the only 4-point swing of the road trip, being that the next 3 are Western Conference teams. And one of those teams for the Panthers is one that you're going to face in like a week, a matinee game on Martin Luther King Day against the Buffalo Sabres. there. So
Mhm.
I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that's another one because it's eight road games, excuse me, 6 road games in the next 7, and right back at home for 1, out for 3 more, then back at home for 1, and then 2. And one of them is Pittsburgh as well, in that which you lost the first one where special teams was disastrous in that game against
Mhm.
the Pittsburgh Penguins just a few weeks ago too. And this was the month where Paul Maurice was discussing that this is the month where it's likely going to be the most difficult. And listen, they're gonna get most of their Western Conference games out of the way once this road trip is over. I believe the only Western Conference games they have left is on the road against St. Louis. They haven't been to Minnesota yet. That's really the only real Western Conference teams that they haven't gone to Nashville yet. Neither. Those are really the only.
That's not Western.
Yeah, barely Western. But outside of that, this is every game outside of this is really that's really what's gonna determine the season for the Panthers, and really that's really where you're gonna see the big swings. But you spoke about Jason Robertson, 55 points in 40 games for the Stars. Joe Pavelski, 38 years old, signed, like you said, signed a 1-year extension, still going. Rope Hintz on that top line as well. Jake Oninger, Mio Heiskanen as well.
Yep.
Now their number 1 defenseman. Now that John Klingberg has moved on to Anaheim as well. So and Jamie Benn is performing performing better, even though he's had his own fair share of injury history as well for the Stars as well. So just their veterans, along with embracing the youth movement as well in Dallas as well. And to think that Jason Robertson wasn't on that Stanley Cup final team just a few years ago. So just it's gonna be a tough environment, a matinee game. I'm gonna assume that Spencer will be between the pipes, as this is an early game for the Panthers. Who knows? It's hard to predict goalies of who starts, but it's gonna be tough these next few. I know Colorado is banged up as can be. No Landeskog, no McKinnon as well, and Vegas has just been. They've come back after an injury-riddled season last year, so it doesn't get easier from here.
No, and I would like Florida to go into Dallas and give them the treatment that Dallas gave Florida earlier this season, because I think that was the game that I ended up. I think I went to, and I think Tyler Seguin hadn't scored like all season, and sure enough, I think he potted 2 goals in that game. But they went up 4-0. And then Florida tried to come back, and it was too little too late. So I would like Florida to actually go out there and actually play their solid game and actually take a W out of Big D out there. And then, you were talking about the games in the future where you have Buffalo, and then you go, where was it they were going right after that? I think
they have a back-to-back against Buffalo and Toronto.
That you got to give 3 out of 4 points. At least with the way that their record is right now, you got to get 3 out of 4, preferably a win against Buffalo, just so that you can get some separation there, if it's possible. And then at least taking 1 point away from the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are just, it doesn't seem like after the start of the season that anybody can stop them right now. They're on a tear.
Mm-hmm. And you spoke about how the Florida Panthers went up 4-0 against the Dallas Stars went up 4-0 against the Florida Panthers in that first period. The Florida Panthers even outshot the Stars 44-29 in that, like you said, too little, too late. And Florida has been part of 2 games where goaltenders have gotten hurt for Western Conference teams. I mean, Scott Wedgwood in that one had to be stretchered off. I believe it was after a goal, if I'm not mistaken. And then their road game against the Vancouver Canucks, Thatcher Demko had to come out after that one. So just some strange Panthers games against Western Conference teams this season. I believe Wedgwood is still out. I mean, that dude had to be
I
stretchered
I
off.
still don't know what happened on that play. I just know that I think he actually made the stop because it was an awesome play. I don't know if it was for Hagee or not, but I know he went to the backhand, or maybe it was Reinhardt. Went to the backhand and he stopped both of them.
I believe it was a groin, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while. That was the first game where Barkov had his non-COVID illness, and then he returned the next. And then the very next week he got sick for a whole week, and of course we figured out what that was. It was pneumonia, according to Barkov's dad. So that was the beginning of kind of everything going down for the Florida Panthers season, really, at that time. But hey, they're
getting healthy. I mean, they're getting healthy right now at the right time, and if this is going to be the toughest stretch of their schedule right now, what better time to get healthy? And maybe they can put some things together. I mean, and maybe they can prove most of us wrong, because I think, I'll be honest with you, I think most of us have kind of seen the light or seen the writing on the wall this season. So, not giving up hope, but at the same time, we got to be realistic.
Yes, absolutely. And Scott Wedgwood is in fact back for the Dallas Stars. After being stretchered off, according to Cap Friendly. But hey, you get a win Sunday, and you'll have just 2 more points to get off this road trip to make it quote unquote successful for this. But Nick, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are celebrating a win tonight with the Florida Panthers on a 3-2 win over the Detroit Red Wings on the road, and 2 perfect on the power play, perfect on the penalty kill. Couldn't ask for a better night for the Cats. So thank you once again for joining, and let everybody know where they could follow you online.
Armando, thank you for having me on, especially on this Retro Friday that we got going on here with the jerseys and everything. It's pretty awesome that just came together like it did. But if anybody's listening, you can follow me on Twitter at Prudential0. I'm always tweeting during games, and if I'm quiet during games, it's usually meaning that probably sitting on one side of my leg and everything, and not too nervous to say anything. So looking forward to speaking with you next week. Hopefully we have some more positive news as Florida pushes on to hopefully obtain a playoff spot.
Yeah, next Friday will be Thursday/Friday night will be the recapping the game against the Vegas Golden Knights, a 10 p.m. puck drop there. So gonna be a late one next Friday. So see you then, my friend.
See you then.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL and Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects. Heidi Kalakash will be going over all the prospects from the most recent World Juniors, junior hockey, and players in college, and everyone who is draft eligible for the upcoming NHL entry draft. Make sure to find Locked On NHL Prospects on Odyssey, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.